Welcome to the latest printed press and our special edition of Thinking Cypriots. What we're going to be discussing today is there a decline in well-being in the Cypriot community? And as ever, I'm presenting Aisha and Djemal with Yusuf Ahmet, the special programs Thinking Cypriots. And we were meant to actually air this last week, so apologies for that. But we're back again this week. And like I said, we're talking about well-being within the Cypriot community and the fact that there is a recognised decline within the community. Yusuf, first of all, shall we define what well-being means for our audiences?
Sure. I think well-being is something that's probably changed a little bit of definition as well. Nowadays, it's more a case of being in a state of being comfortable, being healthy, but also being happy as well. So not only is it just focused on physical well-being, but also mental well-being, emotional well-being. Some even speak about spiritual well-being. We can cover that later too. The definition's broadened a lot more over the last few years, and people are taking it a lot more seriously, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, what we started discussing about this is the fact that I feel there's a traditional view of well-being and what it was like in the past and how it is now. And I feel like people are now really focusing on personal well-being and focusing on the individual, whereas, you know, about 30, 40, 50 years ago, there was a lot more of a sense of community here and in Cyprus. And I think, you know, like when you cooked food, you'd share it with your neighbours. If you were going to do something, again, you would share news with your neighbours, with the community. And I feel like that's slightly in decline. And since COVID-19, I do feel like the community has come more together and we've got more of a sense of community and coming together and all valuing sort of traditions that we had beforehand. I mean, I don't know what you think about that. Do you think there has been a decline in that?
I'm not sure if it's necessarily a decline or maybe we're becoming more aware of it. It's quite hard to tell. It certainly feels like a lot more people are dealing with perhaps mental health issues, for example. Yeah. Or is it the case that it's always been there and people felt so stigmatized they couldn't be open about it? Yeah. I'm not quite sure. I'm glad about the fact that people are more open about it than ever. But whether there's actually a decline, whether things are getting worse or not, studies are indicating that that is the case. I mean, we know that as time goes on, depression or suicide is actually going to be the biggest trigger to death, actually, that most people are actually going to die by taking their own lives, which is really sad. This is an issue, and this isn't something that we're just seeing within certain pockets of the community or those that are sort of economically deprived or, you know, from poor backgrounds. We've even seen this amongst the celebrity community. You know, we've been witnessing this over the last few years, and of course even within the Cypriot community as well. I mean, we've got quite a few people that are really struggling and crying out for help, and perhaps that's worse than it. I mean, I'm sure this was the case in Cyprus too, but I feel like it's even worse now.
I think what it is there's more awareness in Cyprus now, and I think there's more awareness in our community. I think it was always there, to be honest with you. But, you know, like I said before, there was more community links. Maybe people wouldn't go to professionals, but they would definitely have all their dirty linen, you know, out there, and people would gossip about them. And I think that's another bad thing of our community. I mean, I will use the word bad. It is a negative thing when we gossip about each other. And I think that still hasn't gone. I think there is a sense of it sort of coming down, but I think we still do gossip about each other. But definitely now there is more awareness of mental health and well-being, and we are sort of crossing those boundaries of it being a taboo subject. But I still think it is a bit of a taboo. I still think people are ashamed to talk about it, and I think we shouldn't be ashamed. I mean, I've had bouts of depression throughout my life. I'd be quite happy to say that even as a professional in my teaching profession, we are encouraged to go and see counsellors once a month as part of our work-life balance. And they come into our school and we have sessions, and it's actually really fulfilling. We can email them, they can send us positive affirmations, and we're going to talk about positive affirmations in a moment. But I think, you know, we are ashamed. I mean, Mustafa has put a comment. We are, as a Turkish community, ashamed to ask for help, as I was. So you see, there you go. That's a prime example. And I think that's why we felt the need to talk about this today, because that's what it is. There's a decline in our well-being because we're ashamed sometimes to talk about our issues, and we need to be a bit more open, because talking to your friends, to your relatives is all well and good. But at the end of the day, you need to seek professional help. And I very much want to, you know, make that clear to our audiences that we can discuss it here. But if you are suffering from depression or any type of mental health, you need to go and see a specialist. You need to go and see your GP and your doctor and be referred. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you take medication. Yusuf, you were going to say something at that point.
I think you've raised some really good. I mean, the point around gossiping. Why is it that we, as a Cypriot community, why is that a trait of our community? Why is it that people engage in that, you know, so much? Why is it that people are so engulfed in other people's business as opposed to their own? Is that a symptom of probably a issue that we are suffering from community wide? Is it that, you know, we feel like we have to constantly keep up with the Joneses, or I don't know, the Fatimas or the Hatijes? Is it a case that, you know, we're struggling to, I don't know, be content in who we are, and as a result, we feel that we always have to stick our noses into other people's businesses? So gossiping is an issue. The root cause of that is still unclear to me, but it sounds like perhaps people engage in that because perhaps there's something lacking, perhaps spiritually, perhaps mentally. People aren't quite confident or grounded in their own self, and they feel the need to talk about others. Perhaps that makes them feel better in the community, or, you know, I'm not really sure, to be honest.
Yeah, I think gossiping definitely stems from self-insecurities. There's no other explanation to it, because those people who gossip aren't completely bad or horrible people. You know, that nobody is completely bad or completely good. It stems from a personal insecurity about yourself. Like you said, maybe that you feel inadequate financially, maybe you feel inadequate in the way in which you look, in the way your lifestyle is, family. There could be all sorts of things, and it stems from those you know, negative emotions like jealousy, or you know, feeling insecure about yourself, not loving yourself enough. And we talked about this, and like you said, and we're going to talk about faith and spirituality, and, you know, becoming one with your higher self. And I think when you do away with those negative feelings, then you actually become one with that higher self, with the person that you truly are. You know, when we do away with that, and I think positive affirmations, we're going to talk about that at the end, what things we can do to help us with our well-being. We've got a lot of comments again. Djemal has said that there's a statistic often quoted for a while now that 1 in 4 people will suffer from depression. I think this figure will be higher amongst my generation, which is my generation. John said we're of the same generation, and the generations that come after. We do need to be more open and have the courage to talk and seek help if we need it. Definitely we need to be more open. It's not a taboo subject, but like I said before, people who are suffering from depression need to go and see their GP and get professional help. We're discussing it here, but we're not professionals. Obviously, I've got first-hand experience. Yusuf has got first-hand experience. Yusuf is a scholar when it comes to our faith, but neither of us are specialists when it comes to mental health. So although we're talking about well-being here and we're giving tips, if you do feel like you are suffering from depression or any type of anxiety or mental health, you do need to go and seek professional help. And there's nothing, you know, to be ashamed about. And I think maybe in future programs we might actually bring on experts and get their you know, take on it as well. But, you know, what was interesting, Yusuf, is you talked about the physical, mental, emotional links. Should we just briefly talk about that before we go on to, you know, lifestyle and how to be healthy? Because I think that really helps.
They're all massively linked. I think those that are sort of, let's say, depression that's been mentioned, there are studies that show that those that, you know, go out and get active, you know, go for walks or go to the gym, that releases certain endorphins and chemicals in the brain, which can help battle with depression. So physically, being physically fit does help you know, kick off some of those endorphins and makes you think more positively. That's scientifically proven. I think also in terms of what we eat, there's certain foods which are sort of anti-inflammatory as well. People talk about omega-3s, omega-6s, etc. And diet does play a big role. You know, there is that classic phrase, you are what you eat. And I think, you know, if we eat junk food, we start to think junk, and it can actually make us feel quite sluggish, feel quite slow, and not be active. And then you have this cyclical effect. And then emotionally as well, I think, you know, life is tough. And, you know, throughout our lives, there are going to be peaks and troughs. There are going to be those instances where people are struggling with difficulties. And if they're not able to express that, if they don't feel that they're able to express that because the people around them don't understand, then that's a problem. And so we as a community, as a Cypriot community, need to be more open to mental health. We shouldn't just dismiss it. If somebody's depressed, you can't just say to them, snap out of it. It doesn't work that way. It's an actual illness, and it doesn't need to be seen to.
I mean, I want to give an example here, because people used to say that to me when I had very bad depression. There was days when I couldn't even get out of bed and function as a normal human being. And people would say, come on, just snap out of it. Exactly what you said. And I would say, if you are wheelchair bound, you say to somebody, get up and open that door. You don't, because you can physically see the disability. So don't say that to me because I have a disability. You know, honestly, it is, like you said, a condition, and you need to get support for it. It's not something that doesn't exist. It does exist. And it's for someone who's actually been through it. And I suffer from high anxiety. Like I said, I'm a teacher now, but I was a school phobic as a child. I used to have extreme anxiety, and that doesn't leave. What you do is you find coping mechanisms. Things in life go wrong, unfortunately, with all of us. Nobody has a perfect life, but the way you handle it is how you deal with it. Obviously, some people have more tragic things happen to them, traumas, you know, that trigger off mental health issues, and that needs professional help. But in your day-to-day life, things may not always go the way you plan them to go. So you've got to find ways of actually reacting to it. And, you know, my anxiety always was, oh, today something's going to happen. Something's going to go wrong. And I won't be able to handle it. But now I wake up, and those positive affirmations, you know, the breathing exercises, we're going to talk about all these little tips at the end, help you think, I can cope with whatever the day is going to bring. And yes, things may go wrong, because you can't help that. There's no way we can control things going wrong, but I will try and deal with them more sensibly and more calmly, and I will breathe and I'll be okay. And you know what, 9 times out of 10, thank goodness, most of the time we go back to sleep and we wake up and we're fine again, and things work out, you know, and we muddle through. But unfortunately, things do go wrong, and we have to be able to cope with it in a better way. And actually just saying, oh, it doesn't matter, oh, you're fine, oh, just snap out of it, it's all negative language, isn't it, Yusuf? It's negative language, and we need to use positive language. Abi Hussein has put, gossiping is one of Turkish Cypriots' characteristics, which we should be not proud of. Definitely. Gossiping is that negativity that we don't need in our community. And Hava Mustafa has put, we are afraid to share our problems with anyone because we don't know how we are understood. Well, this is it. I think through these informative programs, through talks, through all of the things that we're doing, I think we're going to be educated maybe a little bit more into understanding each other. I mean, I don't know what you think about that, Yusuf.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of good points mentioned. I think gossiping sometimes can come out of envy, and envy, it comes out of almost like this spiritual disease where you're not content with what you have, and you almost want what other people have. So you'll constantly have that envy, and you're carrying it around with you, and that leads you to constantly be talking about others, almost such that you can't enjoy your own life because you're so busy looking at everybody else's.
Yeah, you're not living in the moment, are you, really?
You're not present, you're not being mindful, and you're not being happy, you're not being content, you're not appreciating everything that you've got around you. I mean, there's this one saying that, you know, if you have a mountain of gold, you'd only want another one. You'd be standing on top of that mountain, looking at the other mountain, and not looking at your own mountain of gold. This is a clear problem. And I think particularly with our community, perhaps it's because it's a lack of empathy. Perhaps it's because people don't share their problems. Sometimes there's elements of our community, we have to be honest as well, where there's an element of people being stubborn, that they don't need help, that they're fine, and they just blank it out and pretend that it doesn't exist. And so people might have, I don't know, anxiety or depression, or even something perhaps not as bad. I mean, hoarding, or trying to be perfection. These are symptoms of deeper issues. And we don't want to admit it sometimes, because when you admit it, that takes confidence, that takes courage. That's difficult. It's easy to forget it. It's easy to place it at the back of your mind and pretend that everything's fine. But to actually be honest, be intellectually honest, emotionally honest, and say, look, there are these problems that I have. I want to better myself. There's no shame in that. Having that humility to stand up and say, I'm going to try and be the best person that I can, and I'm going to reach out to who I need to reach out to. And whether it's a psychiatrist, whether it's hypnotherapy, whether it's aromatherapy, whether it's joining the local gym, whether it's talking to people or counseling, whatever it is, if you're willing to, if you really want to change, if you really want to free yourself from the shackles of depression or anxiety or what have you, then that, I believe people in most cases actually do have the ability to overcome it, because we define who we are. We have a choice. Life is how we want it to be. And I'm not, again, going back to your point around if someone's in a wheelchair, no matter how much they want to walk, sometimes they can't. But to some extent, there are people who have gone through depression, who have gone through anxiety, got it seen to earlier, and managed to overcome it. And the quicker you deal with these things, the better. I'll just say one last thing. With depression, for example, we know that if you scan the brain, that someone who's depressed, the brain looks different to someone who's not depressed. So the hippocampus, which is responsible for memory, for example, someone who's depressed, that begins to shrink. And if it shrinks beyond a certain point, it'll be very difficult for it to ever go back to its normal state. And so there's people who have been through depression that will never quite be how they were before. But the quicker that you deal with it, the sooner that you deal with it, the less likely it is to get to that point of, where it's actually causing brain damage.
Yeah, so it's evidence basically that depression actually does affect, brain patterns and the way things look inside your head, definitely. And I think you made a very good point there about living in the present. I think when you ponder too much about the past, there's a problem. And if you are anxious too much about what's about to happen, again, you can't, actually enjoy who you are. And that comparison, I think we need to do away with trying to compare our lives to other people's. I think we have to live for ourselves. But at the same time, I do feel like that community feel has gone. So we still need to unite. So it's not just each to their own, but it's loving yourself first to then be able to connect to other people. And when you connect to other people, not actually comparing what you've got to somebody else, because we're all different. And success, I've had lots of people come on my program for the young Cypriot professionals, and people from lots of different walks of life, but essentially they're all successful, but they've not all had the same path. They may not financially all be at the same point, but they're all successful in their own right. So I think we need to focus on that. And definitely what you were saying about, that you can overcome depression. Like, someone can be in a wheelchair, but then they could do the Paralympics and do amazing things that I couldn't do. So there's another analogy for you. There's lots of ways of imagining, success. We've had lots of comments. Hussein Hodja, a very lovely person in our community, very important person who does lots of great programs as well, has said, love to see you both. Mental health is a big issue. I'm sure he comes across that, being a Hodja. He probably has to deal with that on a daily basis, so he would know. Hava Mustafa has put, I understand what Aisha and Djemal is saying. And sometimes the scars are too deep from childhood, and that's for sure. And that's when you need to seek help. That's trauma. That's something that, sometimes you try and hide away from something that's happened to you. You run away from it. That's, I think, the first steps of being traumatized is you try and deny it, you try and forget about it. But eventually, unfortunately, it does rear its ugly head, and you need to try and deal with those demons, as people have said in the past, you know, and that's when you need to seek professional help. But it doesn't mean that you take medication. Like you were saying, a healthy lifestyle, what you eat. And I think I was going to go on to that. We're going to talk about etiquette of eating and healthy eating and having a healthy lifestyle. I think in our community, back in the day, you know, organic growing, having your own sort of fruit and vegetables in your garden was a very common thing. Not so much common anymore. And I think being green-fingered and growing things from fresh actually really can help your mental health. You know, we've got this viewpoint that Turkish cuisine now is just loads of meat, but it really isn't. I think that's just what the chain of restaurants that we, you know, go and sit and eat in like to think, you know, like to portray out in the media. But actually our food is very homemade, homegrown, and I think we need to go back to that. And you mentioned something to me when we were practicing for this program, and you said, you know, that importance of sitting together as a family and eating a meal together as a family and sharing stories and sharing the day, you know, so how you eat is important as well. And you were going to say something about your partner. I'll let you say that.
Well, no, I think they're all very important things, and I think a few things have changed over the last few decades. Number one, the introduction of supermarkets. So now you go to the supermarket and everything's there. Why would you grow anything at home when it's just so easy, it's so convenient to just go and buy the fruit that they've got and imported from wherever, and who knows what chemicals, etc. they've been using to produce that. We don't question that. It's just there on the shelf, put it in the trolley, we're done with it. And it's the same with meat and chicken and poultry, fish. How are these animals looked after? How have they been killed? What chemicals were used in that process? And there's documentaries about this where there's all this clever advertising. You know, millions are spent with psychologists to look at the colors of the packaging on the food to make you think that it's healthy, when in fact perhaps it isn't. Or the language that they would use makes you think that it's great, you know, but actually it may not necessarily be great. I mean, I was reading a packet of crisps the other day, and I thought, wow, the way they've written about it, 100% British potatoes and all the rest of it. It's like, at the end of the day, a packet of crisps, it's not healthy. It's not the most healthiest thing to eat, is it? And yeah, absolutely, the etiquette of eating. I think the introduction of the television has its positives and its negatives. Long gone are the days where a family would sit down and talk together and spend that quality time together. Nowadays, people are eating on a tray in front of the TV, and those conversations aren't happening. And that's not a healthy family dynamic either. And we're rushing it. We're rushing our food. Everything's fast. You know, you're at work and you've got to quickly grab something. So Pret, you know, Pret has made so much money because it's quick grab and go, or Eat, or all these other chains that people just quickly go there, grab it, and the way that they're eating while they're walking. People don't even sit down and just spend 10-15 minutes to chew their food and eat it. And a lot of the problems that we have is just the way that we eat. You know, we're swallowing it before we've even chewed it. And then we've got indigestion. And then what do? We gulp down a whole lot of Gaviscon or take Rennies because we're not chewing our food. We're not appreciating our food. And when you chew your food, you actually get more out of it. You get more.
You live longer, apparently, the more you chew your food.
You live longer. I think that you appreciate the food a lot more. And also you probably eat less. Studies have shown that if you take time to eat your food, you end up not eating the full plate. And yeah, I think we're so used to eating out now as a community, as a society, that we don't have that homemade food that you speak of. And you know, I love homemade food. I love it when, you know, my wife takes her time to make food with love, and you know, she chops up those carrots knowing that it's going to have nutritional benefit for us as a family. Or when my mum would make us food as well, like if she was to spend however long to make us a beautiful lasagna, like she's cooked that with love, she's cooked that with passion, and that's different. It doesn't taste the same when you go out to a restaurant and you eat, because it's not made with love.
I love that story, cooked with love. And that's so true. You know, when you're preparing food for your family or your loved ones or your friends, it is, you put extra care in it, don't you? And I think, you know, COVID-19 has been a terrible thing, but it's what it's made us do is actually love our homes, because the thought of being in lockdown, I mean, it's just what we called it, lockdown. You know what I mean? Lockdown, you're able to leave the house. And we were like, what? We're not going to be able to enjoy ourselves, because we associated going out and socializing and being outside and eating out as enjoyment. But actually, I think in the last couple of months, we've appreciated the fact that we can enjoy ourselves in our own homes, and that loving your own home and your home environment is also very important for your mental health. If you're lucky enough to have a garden space or to have some outside space in whatever property you live in, to, you know, have that privacy and be able to sit out, that's enjoyable. If not so, then, you know, parts of your home, you know, having a work zone, having a relaxing zone, thinking about these things, even in your home, is really important. Enjoying making food, taking time. It's not easy. We are very busy. And like you said, we have to run around and maybe sometimes eat on the spot. But okay, we might have to do that 3-4 times a week, but at least have that one time a week, realistically, where you can sit down with your family and you can have a discussion, or you can take time. And chewing your food, even when you're in a rush, I think we need to remember to chew our food. I gulp it down all the time, and I don't always eat healthily, but you're right about the fish. You're right about certain things like lentils. I introduced lentils because I had a lot of IBS and things like that, and I felt like it really helped me with my anxiety. Having lentils, having chamomile tea, green tea, more natural teas, having less caffeine, you know, it would give me the shakes. It would calm me down for that second. Like, I'd wake up, I need coffee, and then all the Costa coffees shut down. And I literally was like, my life is gone. Coffee. I'm going to bed and I'm not waking up. Honestly, I was that addicted to coffee, that addicted. But you know what? After a month of not having it the way I wanted to have it, I'm actually okay. No, I don't eat. And when I drink it now, it feels very heavy on my stomach, because I've actually found other ways, like the chamomile tea really calms me down, the green tea, the black tea as well. You know, herbal teas. I tell you, you know, people say this to me and I'll be like, whatever. Even boiled water is good for me, I feel like now. I boil water. I mean, it sounds insane. I never, ever in my life would have accepted boiled water, but now I drink it. I drink hot water now, and I don't understand it. It actually comforts me. Like, I don't know, maybe you know the science behind that.
I mean, I drink, and I swear by anason. Those of you that don't know what it is, it's just a little bit of aniseed with hot water. I've had that since I was little. My mum used to give it to us when I was little, and it really can settle the belly and upset stomach or whatever. I find it very relaxing. I think those that have anxiety, coffee is something to try and refrain from, actually, because coffee does make you anxious. It can give you the shakes. I remember speaking to someone, and they were constantly anxious, and I'm like, I don't know why I'm so anxious. I don't know. I was asking, okay, what have you eaten today? Oh, I've hardly had anything to eat. I had a Red Bull and I had a coffee. Well, what do you expect? You know, like, you've got to look at what you're eating and what you're drinking as well. And these Red Bulls, I'm telling you, there's a reason why they're not sold in certain.
Yeah, and I admit, I'm not perfect. I actually am a Red Bull
right now.
Actually. So I'm not saying all this stuff. I follow some of it and I don't follow some of it. But you know what? I think it's okay sometimes to be bad as well. And like Abi Hussein, moving on to look, he's actually said this, Abi Hussein, and let's talk about this. 21st century way of living does not allow to do all the things Yusuf and Aishin is advocating. It's a 50-week work lifestyle with 2 weeks break, hopefully. Exactly. So that's it. We can make mistakes. We're not saying that. But we need to be more conscious of doing the right thing. Otherwise, it will drain us, it will age us, it will give us anxiety. Like Yusuf is saying, it is very important. Like, I was addicted to coffee. I'm still addicted to some sort of caffeine because I'm having that Red Bull. It's not good. So if I consciously try to have it less, then that will hopefully help me. And it will, because I've had a couple of days of anxiety, and I think it's because I've slightly lost my way and started to incorporate certain bad things into my diet. I think that really, really does affect us. But at the same time, like you said, you know, when you're stressed or you're rushing or you've got some deadline, it's so easy to go to that immediate quick fix. So what should we do to avoid that quick fix?
I think it's, and I'm not perfect either, and by no way am I saying that I am. Even trying to be a perfectionist is a problem, and that's also a mental issue, right? So none of us are perfect. We need to accept that, but we need to try, and we need to be aware, and we need to be conscious. We need to be mindful of all of these things. So if you want to go and have, I don't know, a cheeky whatever, like fast food once a month or whatever, that's fine, as long as you know the effect of that, the consequences of that, as long as that's an informed decision. What I'm talking about is where, as I mentioned before, there's all this money that has been invested, all this clever marketing, that people think that they're eating food which is healthy for them, but it isn't. And that is something I don't agree with, because that's not a truly informed decision. And so we need to inform ourselves.
Yeah, and back to our community, because within our community, like someone's just put boiled water, ginger and honey, that is something that is specific to our community, to our Cypriot roots. And if we actually, because this is the whole point of our program, is, you know, getting back to our Cypriot roots, is actually embracing that a little bit more, researching what our community used to do, you know, back in the day, or what our community, you know, what are our community traits, and what are we famous for when it comes to food and drink? Because actually there's an array of things, and that's it. That's the point, isn't it, Yusuf?
It is, and I think that, come back to your question before as well, it's also just about being more structured, planning your day, you know, setting that time, allocating that time, where you are going to have breakfast at 8 a.m. You are going to wake up at this time in the morning and go for a jog. You know, you are going to have house plants around you as well to help with your well-being. You're going to have the wall colors a certain color to help with your well-being. That you start to implement these small steps, these small rituals, if you like, into your life, so that you can benefit from it and your family can benefit from it, and those that come to your home can benefit from it as well. So if you leave everything last minute, then that's going to have an impact on your overall well-being, your physical well-being, etc., because you're not planned. The best things are the things which are planned for. So if you can make food the night before and take that into work, then perhaps at least you know what you're putting into that food, as opposed to just going and getting, you know, a takeaway every single day at lunchtime, you know, with your work. If your work is like mine, I'm constantly sitting down at work. I'm now trying to stand up and work. Or I try to make sure that I go for a walk and have at least 10,000 steps a day. And now you can get a watch which can count your steps. Doesn't have to be an Apple Watch. Doesn't have to be a Fitbit. You can get something even on your phone. You can count your steps. But being mindful of that, being aware of that, being conscious about that, caring about that. Some of us just don't care, and we spend all our lives trying to accumulate wealth at the expense of our health. And then when we finally get to 40, 45, 50, and we want to retire, we then spend all that wealth that we've accumulated trying to then fix our health. And there's constant tension between the wealth and the health. And it's like, well, you know, what's the point in getting all this wealth if you're not going to be healthy to actually enjoy it? So you have to pace yourself. You have to pace yourself. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And work in and of itself can actually be a problem if you're too extreme in it. You know, you have to have a good work-life rhythm, a good work-life balance, and you are responsible for that. You know, you have to make those conversations. You have to plan your day and structure your day in a way where you know that you're going to have enough time to get that physical activity, to spend time with your family, to read a book, or to escape, or to meditate, whatever it is that you need to do, or to have a bath. People don't have a bath anymore. Whatever it is that they want to do, you're in the driving seat of your own life. And this advice is to myself before anyone else.
Of course, definitely. I think you've got a very good point there when you say organizing yourself and prioritizing what's important. You know what? If you want to do something, you find time to do it. I really believe that. It's like, you know, when someone says to you, oh, sorry, I just didn't have time to ring. And you think, no, if you really wanted to ring me, you would find some point in the day to ring me. Like, it's priorities, isn't it? And sometimes you do have to prioritize. Don't get me wrong. You have to give priority to yourself. You can't be giving to everybody else and never giving time for yourself. So there is that balance. But again, with the work-life balance, you need to, like you said, if you're organized, if you get up at a certain time and you go to bed at a certain time, and you do certain rituals within the day where you have a 5-minute breather and a walk, or you prepare, like we say this to children, prepare your bag the night before. Why do we say that? We could say it to ourselves, prepare your lunch the night before. But then sometimes people are very tired, they come home very late. So then you need to work around that, maybe go into work early so you can come home earlier, or I don't know, or maybe think about how many hours you're actually dedicating to work. Is it healthy? Is it a healthy work-life balance? Do you have to do that? And like you said, yes, you want to accumulate, gain wealth, but at the same time, you don't want it to impinge on your health. And a lot of like my parents' generation always say that, if only I had the health of my youth and the brains of my, of my life now, it would be a perfect combination, so, definitely we need to think about these things, but it's not easy. It's a balance, and it's always trying, work and trial. Abby Hussein has put, what part alcohol and drugs play in our well-being as a community? Is it something we should worry about? Yeah, definitely. The statistics are going up for alcohol and drug takes, and I think we need to really reach out to our community. There is lots of support groups, even as far as Cyprus now, I had the Medi Foundation on, and they deal with addiction issues, and they're actually going to have links here as well. In our community, there is addiction issues out there, and again, it's about being aware of it. It's about facing up to it. And if any of our children or our youth have got addiction problems, you'll see the patterns. And it's about facing up to it and getting the help, not just for the child, but obviously for the people around, to be able to support them as well. I don't know what you'd like to say about that, Yusuf.
I think if you go to a doctor and you've got a problem, normally they ask you 3 things. Do you smoke? Do you drink? Do you take drugs? Because, and if your answer to all of those 3 is no, then, hopefully it's not caused by that. But there's a reason why they ask those 3 questions, because a lot of the issues that we have, a lot of the reasons why people are going to the doctors or the hospitals are related to those 3 things. And the whole thing is smoking, right? Smoking is something where you look at the packet and it tells you on the packet, this causes cancer. And yet people will stick their hand in their pocket, even when times are tough, even in a recession, and pay all that money to buy those cigarettes, and then people judge them for it. And I don't think we should judge them for it. I mean, I don't smoke myself, but I don't judge those who do, because there's a reason why they're smoking.
Yeah.
Right? Number 1, it's addictive, but number 2, you don't know what's going on in that person's life, that they need to turn to something, that they're trying to fill a void, and they're doing that through cigarettes. And the same applies for alcohol, and the same applies for drugs. That's why people are doing it to begin with. So what is it that's causing them to turn to these things? There's something lacking. I don't know whether this is a mental gap or a spiritual gap, but there's something there where people feel like they need to spend their hard-earned money that they did work all those hours for, to then go and spend it on these things in order to feel happy, in order to have some kind of excitement. I don't know.
Immediately, I think smoking, certainly. Alcohol is, I suppose, it's a different effect, isn't it? Because you can, it raises your emotions and things. It's a different thing. But smoking, I think, is just like a anxiety relief. It's just like immediate. Normally, people who are quite stressed, who've got quite a fast-paced life, like you said, spiritually or mentally, they may feel like something is missing, because certainly in this day and age, with all the knowledge that we have about smoking, if you are smoking, then you truly do need to look at yourself as to why you're smoking. And I say this readily, and people who are smokers can, hold me account to what I'm saying. But I really, truly think if you smoke in this day and age, when there's so much knowledge out there that it completely will kill you, then there is an issue there, and you do need support and help to, you know, to not be addicted to it, because I just don't understand it, really. That's one of the things that I don't understand. And I have lots of people close to me that smoke, and I say this to them. And my uncle passed away due to smoking. I mean, he was in the hospital and they told him he had 5% of his lungs working, and he was saying to his wife, "Bring me my cigarettes." You tell me, what is that about? You tell me. I mean, that's something that I remember as a child viewing that, and within a week he'd passed away. He'd passed away. He had a ticket in his pocket to go to Cyprus, and he never went. And it was his dream, because he'd, you know, like he said, retired. He'd bought himself a property, land, and he was building himself a property, and he never accomplished it. That ticket stayed in his pocket, and he never went, because his addiction to cigarettes was just so extreme. So extreme, he couldn't let go of it. But he had mental health issues, he had high anxiety, he had paranoia, he had lots of things. And people would make fun of him in my family. He was the joke of the family, because we weren't knowledgeable. As a child, I viewed this, I don't think we were knowledgeable in our community with mental health. It was all seen as a joke. And yeah, you know, that's something that stayed with me, it resonates with me as a childhood memory. And I think we need to move on as a community now. We need to be more open and honest about mental health, so we can help each other and support each other and get the correct help, which is the important thing. It's not just about us discussing it here. We are not specialists by any stretch of the imagination. We are just posing questions out there to the community, and we just want to put it out there. I mean, my next thing is self-love, and the fact that I've noticed recently, again, this is a bit of a taboo subject, but I've noticed recently with our young how dressing up for attention, for love, from the opposite sex seems to be a bit of an issue. You know, for young girls, I look at these Instagram pages, and I've done petite modeling all my life, but my Instagram doesn't look like that. And I'm not saying that I've always worn things that don't expose bits of my body, but I don't think my page looks like that. Yet young girls feel the need to expose themselves, to show themselves in a certain way, and maybe not age appropriate, maybe not dress appropriate, season appropriate, I would say. I don't know what the answer to that is. At the end of the day, everyone's got the freedom to express themselves which way they want. But I think you've got to look at your intention inside of you. What is my intention when I pose in a certain way, when I reveal certain parts of my body? What is my intention? I think youngsters need to ask themselves that question. And if their intentions are completely that they're confident in themselves, that they're not trying to portray any type of message, they're not trying to attract the opposite sex, then fine, go for it. It's a free world. But really, you need to be honest with yourself. What is your intention? And I think, I don't know, Yusuf, what you think about this, but I think that self-love is linked to mental health and self-love. I don't know what you think.
I think, again, I don't judge people that do dress like that, because I understand that they are a victim of a massive campaign.
Yeah.
Again, millions, billions spent on telling women or men how they should look, what beauty is, redefining beauty, to the point that people no longer feel happy in themselves, that they're going out spending all this money to get, whether it's plastic surgery, certain enlargements, or spending lots of money on certain clothes, to look a certain way in order to what? In order to ultimately, in order to be accepted socially, because they feel like they cannot be accepted for who they are. And we're all victims to this.
I was going to say, I'm addicted to that, to shopping. I'm addicted to shopping. So, yeah, you know, I'm a victim to it as well when I say this. But I think there needs to be a limit with it, definitely. And I think as parents and carers, we need to monitor our children's social media, because there is pressure from society to look a certain way, to be a certain way, to have a perfect features, like you said. And, you know, people younger and younger are resorting to plastic surgery. You know, I know youngsters who are very young who are doing Botox, and you think, but you're so young, you don't have any lines. Like when you smile, naturally, there's going to be some sort of lines on your face. And yet youngsters in their 20s are feeling pressured to have this clean cut, smooth face. I mean, don't get me wrong, like I said, I'm guilty to all of these things. I feel pressure to look a certain way. I go out and spend certain amounts of money on fashion and clothes and all sorts of things. But I do think that we need to address this and maybe question it a little bit. Gulay has put, these days, girls, even in our community, are quick to grow up and lose their innocence very quickly. There was a time when we were running around and not even caring how we look. We are now glued to our phones. Unfortunately, this is the impact of social media, as well as the fact we are slowly losing our values given by our culture. We need to reach out to our youth and protect them before it's too late.
Yeah, I think we're living in a very materialistic society, and you're right. You know, we're glued to our phones. That we're unaware of nature and beauty. And back in the day, hundreds of years ago, people used to look in the mirror, and they'd focus on perfecting themselves, their souls, who they are as people. You know, oh, I thought this thing about this person today. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have judged that person. Now we don't care about any of that. We're too busy looking at our physical appearance. That's the problem with the world today. And we're so concerned with that, and we're so brainwashed into thinking what good looks like, that we don't even look at people for who they are anymore, their character. And so it's very hard to just say, I don't want to be a part of that anymore. You know, I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be defined based on the clothes that I wear, or the color of my hair, or, you know, whether my nose has a certain bump in it or something. I don't know. And I think Gulay's point is really important, that this has now gone into our children, because even when you watch children's programs on TV, and the adverts in between, and they're buying these Barbie dolls, and these Barbie dolls are a certain size and look a certain way. And it's almost like they're being programmed from a young age that this is what beautiful looks like, such that when they grow older, they're then spending all that money in order to look like that. We've actually got people that have gone out and done so much surgery to look like Barbie. I mean, I don't think Barbie's that good looking, to be honest with you. But but my point is that why is it that we're teaching our children, we're teaching our youngsters, our teenagers, this is what beautiful looks like? Why are we not teaching them, actually, you know, our first show, Insan Look? Why are we not teaching them any of that? Why are we not teaching them, you know, it says we need to reach out to our youth and protect them before it's too late. I completely agree. But how do we do that, Aisha? I mean, how do we change it?
No, I mean, it's like I said, I'm guilty of it as well. You know, we are conscious of the way we look. We think about the clothes that we wear. You know, from year to year, we look at pictures. I used to look like this, now I look like that. You know, weight. You know, I've been a petite model all my life, and there's certain dimensions that I have to keep to be able to be on the catwalk, because I'm not tall. So therefore, I had to always be a certain way, and I've let go of that of recent times, because I feel like inclusive fashion is the way forward. So I've been very vocal about that of recent times. But for many, many years, I felt the pressure of it. You know, I was a young child model. So, you know, you can imagine the pressures that I felt as a young child. So, you know, I had a lot of hang-ups and felt I had to be of a certain way and a certain appearance for a very long time. And I've now sort of understood that actually beauty is in the hands of, what's the saying of the beholder? Like, you know, you are beautiful when someone loves you for who you are. That's when your beauty actually shines out. That's what I've learned. It's actually to do with loving yourself, and for people to love you for who you are with all your faults. I mean, I saw a saying today, and it was about, you know, when your partner sees you when you've woken up in the morning, when you haven't brushed your hair, when you haven't brushed your teeth, when they know when you're low, when you're high, when you're happy, at your best, and when you're not at your best, and they still love you. That's what true love is all about. That's what acceptance is all about. That's when you truly feel in tune with yourself, when you let go of everything and you say, you know what? This is me. Accept me for who I am. And if you don't like it, jog on. you know, and I've sort of come to that point in my life, and I'm in the limelight a lot, but I have come to that point in my life and I feel so much happier for it. And I'm not saying that I don't present myself. When I go for an interview, I still dress up smart. I still present myself. I still put on makeup. I still try and make myself feel good, but I'm doing it for me. My intentions have changed. I'm not doing it to get approval from somebody else. I'm doing it to make myself happy. So then you know your limits. You know, okay, I can dress up one day, I can dress down one day. Who cares? One day I'll have my hair down, one day I'll have my hair up. You know, it took me years to be able to put up my hair like this and to actually show my face exposed. It took me years to have that confidence. And I'm now doing it on a live feed. So I've moved on. And this is the message I want to give to our youngsters. Honestly, love yourself for who you are. And that's when you attract positivity. If you feel positive about yourself, then you attract positivity. But it's not easy. It's a journey that you have to go on. It doesn't happen straight away. Like putting on makeup. You know, a young girl will not know how to put on makeup straight away. She'll have to experiment to understand what her good features are, what her not so good features are. No one is perfect in life. Everybody, like I've got quite a prominent nose, but I've got nice eyes. You know, like you basically embrace what's good about you, and those things that you feel not so confident about, you find ways of, you know, maybe not enhancing it so much, but what you do is you embrace it. I think that's what the point I'm trying to make. We've actually got some comments here. I believe that there has always been mental health issues in the Turkish Cypriot community, but the elder generations never spoke up. We are a culture that tends to judge each other, whether it's health, wealth, weight, education, and so on. And unfortunately, it is common to have lots of family issues too. Yes, because we're quite a lively community, aren't we? We're quite emotional. We should never be ashamed to ask for help when we feel low, no matter what the issue is. 100% I agree with that. We should not feel ashamed. You know, that's such a good point, you know, Ren, that she's making, that we shouldn't be ashamed to ask for help.
No, we shouldn't. And I think it's sad that we as a community judge people based on their job or their educational background or their health or their weight. You know, things like that lead to eating disorders. That kind of judgmental behavior, no one really considers the impact that has on others. But it's hard, again, like we're living in a world where there's a system that makes you feel inferior, that makes you feel like you need to put on that makeup to begin with. And I think we need to open our eyes to that and acknowledge that and be aware of that, be conscious of it, be mindful of it. Because as people, how can you expect someone to love you for who you are, as you just beautifully articulated, if we don't love ourselves first? If you don't accept yourself, how can you possibly expect somebody else to accept you?
Yeah, it's about the image you portray. If you say so many times, I'm rubbish at this, I'm rubbish at this, whether people know whether you're rubbish at it or not, they'll start to believe it. Honestly, it's those affirmations. If you keep saying something negative, eventually everyone will believe you, because why should they not believe you? You keep saying it. So really, it's very important to be positive about yourself. Abi Hussein also has said culture is thought through family, but family breakdowns is a big problem for Turkish community in UK. This is true, you know. We do have a lot of family issues, and I think we need to start to speak about it, because I'll tell you a story. When I first moved into my house, all my family came round, and actually we were having a great time. No one was arguing. We had a whale of a time. Everyone left. The next day, my neighbours came at my door. They were like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "We heard loads of shouting yesterday." I said, "Okay." And I said, "Oh no, we're fine. That's just how we are." I said, "Honestly," I said, "if we were fighting, you really would know. We'd be like spilling outside. We'd be on the lawn. We'd be in the garden. Things would be flying." I said, "That's actually when we're getting along." But I said, "Yeah, I know. We need to keep the noise levels down." And that's it, you know. I think we need to actually respect each other's space. I think we're so used to, I mean, it's lovely to be a community. It's lovely to be part of big families and to know each other's business. But sometimes actually we need to give each other space. And for a long time, I was afraid of being on my own. I wouldn't go shopping on my own. I wouldn't sit for a coffee on my own. But I think part of helping my well-being was enjoying my own company. And I think we need to start doing that a little bit more in our community, is actually understanding that we need space sometimes. That sometimes when someone says something horrible to you, like your mum and your dad or your sister or your brother, instead of having a great big cat fight, walk away, have a bit of reflection time, you know, and actually be honest and open about how you feel. Don't bottle it up. I think a lot of the times we've not been honest with each other, or we've been too honest and we've said too much. I think we've got to find that balance. Sometimes you can't take back some of the words that you say. So sometimes maybe when you're really angry and you see red, maybe you need to, you know, like anger management, you need to just go out for a walk before you say something terrible to the person that you love. Because you can't take those words back. They're there. Once you've said it and it's in the ethos and it's in the air, it'll be in that person's mind forever. So before you hurt them, maybe go for that walk, maybe have a bit of fresh air. Think about what you're going to say before you say it. So when you see red, you know, take that deep breath, take a moment. And at the same time, be honest as well. And like you said, get help. There's nothing, you know, wrong with seeking help, but I think definitely in our community we can be very dysfunctional, and we need to, you know, be aware of that and put things into place for that. Really, I don't know what your ideas are. We're almost up in our hour, by the way.
Yeah, I just want to say two things. Well, first of all, I just want to say, with respect to families, it's because there's a lot of love, there's a lot of emotion in the family, and people get hurt. When people get hurt, they don't know how to deal with it. And I've seen families where people don't talk to each other for 20, 30 years, 40 years.
Well, yeah.
And then someone dies, and then you see them at a funeral, or someone's wedding. And sometimes, you know, people don't, they've lost that contact, even amongst siblings. And it's hard because people get hurt. They don't know how to deal with that. They don't know how to communicate that. But you need to have some communication. Don't completely wipe them away. And people have different relationships, different experiences, different things have happened at different levels. But overall, it's a shame, you know, that we're having those family issues. We're all sometimes at the crux of it. It's nothing more than just emotion. Sometimes it's love, you know, and
Love.
it's love, and that can be against us. But if we truly love one another, then sometimes we've got to put what we feel to the side and be the bigger person and just reach out and just have. It doesn't mean you have to be close or best friends or be around each other's house every single day, but an occasional text now and then, some kind of communication, some kind of connection is required.
Yeah. Don't let it get to that point where we're cuss. Cuss is such a, like, you know, when you don't talk to each other, isn't that such a common thing in our community? And then it's such a shame you waste like 10, 15, 20 years, you know, family members. And it's in all of our families. It's in my family, I'm sure it's in your family. Most Turkish Cypriots have this thing where they just stop talking to each other. And it's a real shame. You know, so I think, like you said, before you get to that point, before you say those words and you hurt somebody, really think about it. But emotions free someone's. But yeah, I think we're a very emotional community, and there's good things, there's pluses to that and negatives, but we need to embrace it, but at the same time try and control it a little bit more as well. So before we end the program, what tips can we give for our well-being? I'll let you start because you've got some really good ideas, Yusuf.
Yeah, I think having a healthy, balanced diet is really important. So be mindful of where you're sourcing your food from. Try not to eat too much meat. We shouldn't be a culture that just eats meat. That's not good for us. Try to get, you know, your 5 a day, get some veg, and try to source the veg from good sources as well. If you can grow at home, amazing. But as Abe Hussein said, very difficult in the 21st century.
Yeah.
I think physical exercise, don't underestimate it, even if it's just going for a walk for half an hour in a day. Go and have that brisk walk. There's studies that show that it can reduce diabetes or heart-related issues, etc., etc. So go for those walks, have that exercise. It's really important, and it's a great stress buster as well. And perhaps rather than smoking a cigarette, you can go for a good walk instead. Thirdly, I think mentally, it's important. You mentioned about, if you could keep telling people that you're not good at something, they might start to believe it. Well, you will start to believe it as well. And the thoughts that we're thinking in our head, we need to be positive. We need to have these positive affirmations. We should wake up and we should tell ourselves that we are competent, that we are worthy, that we are essentially good people. And whatever issues or mistakes that you've done in the past, leave them in the past. Don't judge yourself based on the past or other people based on their past, because they don't live there anymore. You're now in the present. We change our mind, we evolve, we move on. Our mistakes is what helps us become better people ultimately anyway. So positive affirmations, whether that's from a religious angle, from a spiritual angle, from like an Islamic perspective, for example, people do dhikr. They say things like alhamdulillah, like gratitude. Really important to express gratitude, because if you're grateful and you mean that with your heart and you're expressing that every single day, you become content. And if you're content, then perhaps that will help tackle envy and jealousy and gossiping, which are issues in our community. Right? And perhaps we won't be judging others. We need to realize that we're all human. Doesn't matter, we're all different. We might have different languages, different colored skin. We might be from different parts of Cyprus. We might have different genders, different perspectives, but we're all human. None of us are God. And we need to stop judging others. None of us are perfect. If someone is perfect, fine, but I don't think anyone is. God is perfect, but God still forgives. And judgment is only for God, really, unless any of us here are a judge in a court and they're judging a specific case, which I don't think we are. But as a community, we should have husnul dhan. We should have a good opinion about one another. If you see someone doing something you think is wrong, give them an excuse, give them the benefit of the doubt. You don't know what's going on. And then 3 more things. Aromatherapy, I swear by it. If you're struggling with sleep is so important. We didn't talk about sleep, but sleep is so important. Try to have good structure in your sleep. Try to get to bed at a certain time. Remove any light from your room. Don't have a TV, or if you do, turn it off after a certain time. Try to not look at your phone. Lavender oil, I think, is brilliant, or your ylang-ylang. These things scientifically do have an impact. Don't underestimate them. And I think, sleep, you have to have the right amount of sleep. Don't sleep too much, but don't sleep too little as well. If you're sleep deprived, you're not going to have a good productive day the next day, and it's going to be a roll-on effect. And that can take weeks to perfect. But again, people suffer from insomnia. There's apps, there's help that you can go and get professional help. And then finally, I'm rambling on here, but my last point.
Nice. All good stuff.
Meditation. I think meditation is great. Some people try it doesn't work. I think meditation, there's different forms of it. Even if it's just turning everything off for 10 minutes and just having a time to reflect on your day. How did your day go? What could have gone better? What didn't go so well? What are you going to change about your life tomorrow? Having that time to reflect, to ponder on yourself spiritually, on your day and how you interact with others, and being a little bit critical on yourself in terms of what you could have done better, but not too critical. Don't hate yourself. Just do it from a positive perspective. Like, okay, going forward. Don't just go through life blind. Don't just be on auto drive and not have those checkpoints at the end of each day. Appreciate all the good that's happened that day. Sometimes we have all this good stuff around us. One negative happens and we fixate on that. And we just need to digest and appreciate all the blessings, all the goodness that we've had in that day, and just take that moment to absorb it and be grateful for it. We just need to stop being negative as a community. We need to start being positive. And if you're positive and you have a positive outlook on life, you'll think about others positively, you'll think about yourself positively, and life will be positive as well.
We've got lots of comments again. So we'll go up to Ertanç Bey, I think was the first one that we missed. A lot of people have cries of confidence issues. Self-worth and self-confidence comes with people being at peace with themselves. Everyone should have me time to develop these valuable qualities. 100%. I think that's really helped me. Being confident enough to have that alone time really, really helps. You know, focusing on becoming in tune with your higher self, I like to call it. Next comment, also, I love my family. I'm visiting, where is my family coming from? Kirin, Bulgaria, Libya. Wow, okay, that's amazing. So, you know, actually getting in touch, and hopefully now with COVID slowly passing, we'll be able to get in touch with some of our loved ones that we've not been able to see. And I think that definitely having your loved ones around you does help. Abi Hussein, we have to learn to be more tolerant with each other, especially with family. Yeah, tolerant, forgiving. If someone makes a mistake, not holding a grudge, I think is very important. We hold grudges in our community, maybe letting things go. You know, it's all about, you know, my pride has been hurt. Who cares? In 20 years' time, when you meet at that funeral and you wasted 20 years, can you feel pride? Is it tangible? Is it something you can treasure? Not really. What is pride? It's nothing really, I think. Next, also everyday walk. Yes, exercise, you were saying, is very important. Gulay has said, I think what we don't understand as much in our community is the importance of emotional intelligence. 100%. It's not about just understanding our own emotions, but also understanding the emotions of others. Having a high emotional intelligence will not only help us in our personal life, but also our work life. Being an empath, definitely, but up to a certain extent. Not to be sucked in and to have our energy sucked out, but definitely you need to have that emotional empathy, to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Say, you know, if I was in our shoes, how would I react? How will this be? 100%. Arzu has said, be kind, respect on other people's personal space. Again, something that our community sometimes lacks is giving people their personal space, especially in Cyprus when we go for a holiday, not being able to have that holiday. Yeah, so please give people their personal space. Gulay has written more. Being a psychologist, I think that's the reason why this is so specialism. Also, another tip for people who work during the night or so late shifts, try not to sleep straight after you finish work. Try to engage with something to relax your brain at least 20 minutes before you sleep. Otherwise, your brain will still be in work mode. 100%, you do have to do that. And you will struggle to sleep and also won't have a very healthy sleep. So, yeah, definitely, I think winding down time, even if you are on a late shift, is important. And like what helped me was having that chamomile tea after having a very stressful time. That really helped me. Any other tips that you've got, Yusuf, before we end the program?
Yeah, hot drinks and a hot bath or a hot shower, or trying to kind of wind down, getting ready for bed an hour before. You can't just go into bed and expect to sleep. You need to prepare yourself. And the reason why having like a hot bath or a hot shower or a hot drink can help is actually, as your body cools, that helps your body go to sleep. Because sometimes having a little bit of a cooler room, not too cold, but a little bit of a cooler room can help you get to sleep as well. And sometimes you need to clear your mind. If there are lots of things on your mind and you can't sleep, maybe have a pen and paper next to you.
Yeah,
down, and you can deal with it tomorrow. Or, as I mentioned before, you reflect on your day. You know, just make peace with it. Whatever's happened, if there was an argument that day or whatever, there's no point worrying about it. There's no point not, losing sleep over it. These things happen. Try to be more pragmatic. And I think one of the really good points that you just mentioned, and we didn't really get as much time as we would have liked on the show to have gone into more, is around emotional intelligence, because a lot of these arguments that happen with families and friends and with others is because people just lack that empathy and they just don't understand somebody's emotional well-being. Somebody's just experienced something, they're talking out of emotion, and you're arguing with them logically or rationally. People have things going on in their life. They might be stressed with work or with family, or they've just had a baby or whatever, and they'll say certain things because they're in that moment. And you've sometimes just got to stand back and appreciate that,
Just be forgiving, I think.
Yeah.
forgiving. You know, don't get me wrong. If somebody repeats their bad behaviour or they're abusive towards you, then you need to walk away from that person. So there's nothing wrong with walking away from a negative situation, but at the same time, it's engaging with somebody and being able to empathise with them sometimes as well. And that's emotional intelligence, and that's a very important thing. I mean, you know, even when you're like lecturing someone, like with our children, I can see when my children switch off. I'm lecturing them, but then there is that point where they can't hear you anymore because you've spoken for too long, and you need to give them that space to reflect. That's when you say, okay, you can go now. I'm not happy with you, but just think about what you've done. You know, put the onus on them sometimes. You know, and I know me and you, we'll talk for we could talk for another 5 hours. But you know, there is a cut-off point, isn't there, when you're trying to explain something to somebody, and at the end of the day, they need to go off and have their me time and reflect on their behaviour. And rather than giving them a punishment, sometimes saying to them, well, what do you think? Like, I'm telling you all the things that I'm not happy with, or that I think you've let yourself down. You know, go away and think about it, and you come back to me. 9 times out of 10, they know what they've done. They know what the mistakes are, and they will correct it. And when their emotions have calmed down, especially teenagers, they're very emotional, you know, hormones and everything that the chemicals that are going around their bodies, they will be very emotional. And sometimes shouting back at them when they're shouting isn't the best form of communication. Sometimes you've just got to try and just give them their space, and then when they've calmed down, try and then reiterate the points, and maybe sort of separate the behaviour from the person, not blame the person, not use language. It's very important what type of language we use as well, not the pointing and the you have done this and you have done that, but maybe I didn't like that behaviour, or I didn't like that action. Shall we think about that? What do you think? Do you think that was the correct decision? Do you think you could have made a better decision? You know, wording it a bit more positively. I know it's very difficult when we're running around, we've got very busy lives, but just think about it, like just taking that time out to, you know, think about what you say to people is very important.
I think it's also how you say things as well. So sometimes shouting and screaming is not, I mean, I very rarely shout or scream actually. And some people feel that they have to raise their volume to be heard, but the choice of words is sometimes more powerful. Sometimes the content of what you're saying should speak the volume, not the tone of your voice. Sitting down, if you have a disagreement with someone, sit down and talk about it over a tea or water. Don't stand up and have that confrontation. Psychologically, sitting down is less likely for it to end up in an argument.
Yeah.
And you know, set the scene, set the tone, and say, look, I don't want to argue, but the other day you said this, and I want to let you know how that made me feel. And I think having an open discussion sometimes is also really healthy, not bottling things up inside, because true friends are honest with one another. But it's how you communicate it. If someone does something to you and you just don't talk to them again, that's not friendship.
I know what they did wrong. Yeah, definitely.
They won't know. They will learn from it.
Yeah, Abi Hussein said, from 1 to 10, where would you put the Turkish community as in well-being? Do we need help, or are we fine as we are?
Personally, I feel like the biggest problem in our community is that we won't like to accept when we need help. We don't want to accept that. And I feel like actually if we were just humble enough, if we were just sincere enough to say, look, we're not perfect and we do actually need to reach out to others to help us, I think we will be better. So for me, I'm gonna rate ourselves under 5. I'm gonna give us about a 4, because I feel like, and this is my experience, I can't talk on behalf of the whole Turkish Cypriot community. I don't know the whole Turkish Cypriot community, but from what I've seen and what I've experienced, I feel like overall, we do have physical health issues, we have mental health issues, people aren't eating the right foods, and people have lots of family issues or friends issues, and can be very stubborn and very set in their ways. And particularly the gossiping as well is a symptom of something more of an issue, which is lack of empathy, lack of love, jealousy, hatred, envy, and being judgmental. And I think until we each as a community, each of us within our community, proactively try to cleanse our spiritual hearts from that, try to say, no, I'm not going to judge other people, this is wrong. And even though I may have been doing this all my life, or I've seen others doing this all my life, doesn't make it right. And I'm gonna set a precedent within my family to lead a good life. And I think we all need to do that. We all need to accept that we're not perfect, but we want to strive for that perfection, and we all need to help one another. And this is the final point I would say as to why I've given it a 4, Abbe Hussein, and that is, when I look at some other communities, I've got some friends who are part of the Jewish community.
Yeah.
And obviously the Jewish community isn't one whole monolithic community. There's different communities within that. But my particular friends within that community help one another. They look out for one another. They like to see them becoming successful. You know, they try to actually go out of their way to help one another to become successful. Now, perhaps that's just the friends that I'm speaking with within that community. But I don't see that as much anymore within our community. We used to be a people where people genuinely wanted to help one another. Yeah. Where if you were stuck on a road and you needed direction, if you knew that someone was Kıbrıslı, they would help you. If they were Cypriot, they would help you. They'd say to you, do this, do this, do this. And they'd go out of their way to help you because we would see ourselves as one. We'd treat each other like family. And now it's everyone's out for themselves. It's survival of the fittest, each their own. That's not right. That's not who we are. That's never been who. That's not our DNA. That's not what our nenes and dedes will like in Cyprus, or their nenes and dedes. You know, we need to go back to our principles. We need to go back to what defines us as a community, and that is being more selfless. You know, caring about us. If we want our community to succeed, then we need to start to think and cooperate and help each other as a community.
Connect more, certainly. And I think this COVID, I mean, a lot of my programs have been making that point. There's so many amazing people in our community, and through social media and, you know, being at home, we've connected, and we need to continue those connections and make them stronger and grow as a community, and not be so insular, but be looking out. And like you said, be more positive, less of the negativity, loving ourselves more. Seville has put, I hate gossip, and Abby Hussein has made a lovely point to you, Yusuf, saying that people like you, Yusuf, should be more vocal in our community to get the message across, and that's why we're doing these programs. And the last comment, Seville, I feel we need to talk more regarding these issues in our Turkish community, and this is what our program is about, and we're going to continue to do these programs and continue to talk about these issues and be more vocal about it. But what I'd like to say is, obviously, with well-being, we need to you know, discuss these things, have have I was saying, we need more people like you, Yusuf, because, you know, you were on my young professionals program as well. So, you know, young professionals who are educated, who are forward thinking, we need more of this sort of communication in amongst our community, so that people who are vulnerable, who are feeling a little bit low, who do feel like they've got mental health issues or they need some support or some care, can actually reach out, be open and honest, and have these conversations and seek help. I mean, I think my last point would be, if you do have any issues of well-being and mental health, you must speak out, you must try and get support, but obviously you must get the professional help as well. So go and see your GP, because honestly, it's not all about just getting medication. It's also about lots of other strategies that could be put into place. It's been wonderful. We will be back again next week on our program talking about issues that affect our Cypriot community, and we'll be putting out our question probably on Monday, so that people can make comments and put out questions already in advance. But thank you very much for being with us. Thank you to all our comments, for all our viewers. Thank you, Yusuf. Thank you very much. And that's it. We've run out of time. So that's it from us, from Eurogenç TV. Have a very good evening. Good night. Thank you. Bye-bye.
world we're living in today. Look at the broken communities. And if you know what Edible London represents, that's what we're here to do, bring it all back together. Food growing and sharing food, that's what Edible London is about. This is what brings our communities back together. And sustainable food production is exactly what we aspire to do. The Edible London heroes are going through approximately 4 tons of surplus food a day. Once it's cleaned and sorted through, we're distributing it to our many partners across the capital. Approximately 50,000 people a week are being reached with the food we save. This is just the beginning. We're ready to scale this operation up big time. We just need your support. I just want people to actually see what's being created here, and not only to see, to become a part of it. We're asking for you to come and get involved, to help us keep feeding people. The problem of food poverty isn't going to go away. If anything, it's going to increase and become worse and worse and worse. In 12 weeks, we have almost reached 300,000 people with food. This is absolutely amazing. We are raising this 100K so we can keep this operation going, relocate and scale up. We are making it edible in any which way we can. We just need your support.